You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight, I'm giving the information and the insight on how to positively deal with family conflict throughout this holiday and definitely throughout the new year. You know, a lot of times we have conflict with our family. We're dealing with issues, drama, anger, resentment, stress. And it seems to be even compounded when it gets into the holiday season because it seems so stressful and so overwhelming. And I think it's because it's coupled with the fact that it's a holiday, that it's a big deal. This is a big time of year. You know, this is the big buildup all year. And so it feels like there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. And I feel that when we can deal with our family issues and our family conflict in a positive manner, be able to understand the power that we have the ability to reflect and understand exactly what's going on without certain perceptive thought processes that normally cloud our judgment and sometimes make us angry or defensive. I mean, think about when was the last time that you got defensive in an argument? You remember how great that went, right? You're like, oh, great, I did not win that argument. I got nowhere near it. And on top of that, everybody was yelling at me about how I was so defensive, right? I know, that's what I'm talking about. It's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you know what? I don't want you to be in that situation. I don't want you to feel that way. But better yet, I don't want you to be backed into that corner this holiday season or any season or month after. It's your time to shine. It's your time to jump up to the plate. And it's your time to positively deal once and for all with these family conflicts that bombard our holiday season every year and go throughout the year causing us pain and suffering. Life is too short. You know, like you see that magnet. I had a magnet one time. A friend of this guy was dating my mom, okay? And you know, I don't know about y'all, but anybody out there where, you know, your parents got divorced and then your parents started dating, and my mom was dating this one guy, and you know how it is, just dating this one guy and everything's great. He was a little younger, I think. At least he acted younger. And I remember he got her a magnet that said, "Life is too short to drink cheap wine." And you know what? Life is too short to deal with family conflicts day in and day out. Life is way too short for that. It's too short. It's too precious. But you know, a lot of us find ourselves in the muck and yuck of it when it comes to holiday issues with our family. It's like they took a record and they just kept repeating those first 8 seconds over and over and over again, where it's like, you know, you get that little couple of beats of rhythm, the same words, and it's like the same arguments. It's like, we've got to end the broken record, and tonight's the night to start doing that. Last night I did a show on dealing with family conflicts, and I talked about how you can create memories instead of misery, and about getting together with the relatives the holiday season, and how it's supposed to be a cheerful occasion filled with love and laughter. But oftentimes we find these annual reunions stressful. You know, you have the personality clashes, you have the conflicts that seem to surface every year. And you have those relatives who are simply annoying and can certainly put a damper on your and everybody else's festivities. And instead of preparing for battle this season, I ask you to put the sword down, to put the proverbial thoughtful, mind sword down, and look at this holiday season as an option to actually enjoy yourself. I know, it sounds crazy, but you can do it. And even though the last few years could have been insane and painful, and for some of you doubly painful, it's time to let that go and to move on. And last night I gave you several tips on how to do that, but tonight I'm giving you tips that I didn't talk about last night. New ones. New and improved tips that will actually take what we talked about last night and push it over the edge and concreting it in to work for you all year long. Because isn't it more than just a holiday season? Isn't it more than just trying to get along during the holidays? Isn't it more about just getting along all the time? Isn't it more important to find a common ground? Isn't it more important to find the love all year long? That's what we're talking about. And it's so important right now because the changes we make now will be changes that we have forever. And that's what's so important. So let's talk about the first thing that I think makes all the difference in the world. The first tip tonight that makes all the difference in the world, and it's something that I have used and continue to use in my life. I remind myself of it on a daily basis when I need to. Not so much daily anymore. It's kind of it's already kind of in my brain. It's part of my noodle, you know. And I figured this out years ago because I realized that there's a lot of titles we have floating around. CEO, friend, best friend, grandmother, parent, mother, father, brother, sister, stepfather, stepmother. We have all these titles floating around in life. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. How many people do you have in your life that have a title? Okay, I have several. So I ask you tonight to begin to rid yourself of titles and rid yourself of resentment. What I mean by that is when we rid ourselves of the titles that we've given others. When we look and realize that we have given titles to people and that when we do give titles to people, depending on the title, we tend to put people on a pedestal. Based on that title, depends on how high and tall and palatial the pedestal is. And for some of those with certain titles, they can never do no wrong. If they do wrong, then there's something really wrong in the universe. And all hell is about to proverbially break loose. And we are all going to die. And you know what I'm talking about because there's certain titles in your life, and I know that the titles that were most important to me as a kid was mom and dad. I mean, outside of God, that's a totally different deal. I'm talking about human, mostly family titles. These titles get us into a lot of trouble. And what I mean by that is these titles can sometimes cause happiness and can sometimes cause safety, make us feel safe. But sometimes these titles can cause us to feel resentment. Because remember that titles actually define. And remember when we define something, we're what? We're actually kind of judging it. And when we're judging other people, we're putting people into specific boxes, labeled and titled. So let's begin talking about that parental title. Let's begin with that. And I'd like to start with the father title. Dad, really. Dad is the title. Dad. You don't go around telling people, hey, Dad, what's up? People look at you crazy if it's not your father. No, you have dad, father. Father, dad. You know, this person raised you. Father raised you. Dad raised you. They were there for you. They're defined by dad. And people go, well, what does that really mean then? What does that really mean to have the title dad? How does that work? What comes with that title? And my comment to them is like, for Christ's sakes, what the hell are you talking about? With the title of dad or mom or father or mother comes a direct title and correlation to upbringing, who raised you, security to some degree, or for some of us not, family, that sort of thing. That is a huge title. I mean, some of us even have a problem calling somebody we're dating a boyfriend or a girlfriend, okay? Haven't you ever seen a couple where they've been dating and one person goes, "Oh my God, your boyfriend, you all look so great together. Y'all are such a great couple. How long y'all been married?" And they're like, "Married? Oh, no. She's not my wife." Or somebody just started dating and somebody goes, "Man, how long have y'all been boyfriend and girlfriend?" "Oh, no. We're just friends." Think about that. No. We're not married. No. Or, no. We're just friends. Okay, see how important titles are in our life? Do you get it? Because I didn't get it in the very beginning. As a kid, we walk into life, and what are some of the first words that we're taught? Think about this. Mama, mommy, dad, daddy. Those are the first words that we're taught, right? I mean, for most of us. And how does that really configure into our life? Think about it. That title is indoctrinated and tattooed into our brain. And those are the first words we learn, and those are the most important words we learn as kids, because, the first words are supposed to be the most important words. And if those are the first words, those are the most important. So how much importance do you think that the title of dad, father, mother, or mom have on your life even today? I mean, I know some of you out there are like, "Hey, you know what? I'm in my 40s, and, how are you trying to tell me that this is really impacting my life?" But it is. I mean, until we, kind of own up to this and realize the amount of energy and power that we put into titles, I think to some degree we still give it a lot of energy no matter what our age is. No matter how intelligent you are, no matter about how big of a company you run, it's not about that. We all have family conflicts to some degree or another. Whether maybe we realize it or not is to be determined, but it might not be a conflict with you at all. You might not have the conflict. You might not even know exists. And sometimes it takes you to get outside of the comfort zone, look from all sides and all perspectives, and see what's truly happening. And what I mean by that is a lot of times we give titles to people and then we expect them to live up to those titles. So let me talk about the father title right now, because this is dear to my heart. Because I love both of my parents. They're very wonderful people. And I love them with much love. And I care about them. But it's not like they're perfect. You know what I'm saying? They're not perfect because they can't be. People can't be perfect. They're not capable. We as humans are not capable of being perfect. Therefore, to want to have somebody to be perfect is what? It's not going to happen. However, think about it. When we give people titles like dad and mom, mother and father, and those are the first words we ever learn, doesn't that directly seem like that would mean that they're perfect? I think so. And I know that some of you out there are like, "Yeah, I've dealt with this," you know what I'm saying? But for some of us, it's new stuff too. But I think we put a lot into titles. And when it came to my dad, I love him. And for Christ's sake, he's my father. He raised me. He's supposed to be there for you. You look up to him. You're his seed. And so being that it means so much, I have a lot of clients that come into my office that were abandoned by either their mother or their father. At a very early age, before they could understand what was going on, they were abandoned. How do you think that would feel like? What do you think that would feel like? How would you feel? And I ask this question because I know a lot of people listening are like, well, I haven't been abandoned by my parents, but this is the extreme. Because I like to paint pictures certain times to explain what the extreme can be, and then back away from the extreme and drop it down to the issue at hand. So, how would you feel if somebody abandoned you that had a title of a parent, a guardian? That's extreme because you know what? We've titled them already as a guardian, someone that guards us, someone that takes care of us, someone that's there for us, someone that helps us. And when that person goes against that, what happens? We lose faith. We get scared. We feel lesser than. We feel out of control. There's a lot of things that happen then. So let's drop this issue down a little bit and talk about the issue over this holiday season. Some people weren't abandoned by their family, but instead, there's been arguments that have been there for a long, long time. Maybe their decision to get a divorce or their decision to move on with their life goes against what their parents believe they should have. Perhaps maybe they married somebody that their parents aren't really that happy with. Perhaps they chose a lifestyle that the parents weren't ready to deal with. And I think that these issues become a problem in our life when we see them having the end-all be-all when it comes to decisions on our life. And I feel that the first thing that's applicable for us to do is to take the title out of the equation and see them as a person. Take the title out of the equation and see them as a person. And while we do that, and when we do that, when we're able to finally make that happen, we're able to identify the expectations that we have created. We're able to identify the expectations that we have created for those people with those titles. We're able to identify with that. We're able to see some of the expectations that are completely out of control, only and solely based on their relation to us. The second thing is when we take the title out, we're able to address the situation in a normal, rational way. So let's say, for example, you're at the table, it's the holiday season, and everybody's getting food and pouring some wine, and everything's fine, and you're a little stressed out because you hope that nobody brings up an issue that you've been dealing with. Right? So for an example, let's talk about something that I recently dealt with a client, and it was the client had recently gotten divorced I'd say about a year and a half ago. And they were still trying to deal with it. It kind of came out of left field. They weren't expecting a divorce. They were from my client's perspective, extremely happy and never saw it coming. And we've worked through that since then. But, sometimes we create these mind barriers where we don't really want to see everything. You see it a lot of times with parents dealing with children that are on drugs. They don't want to agree with the fact that the kid's on drugs. Okay, they'll come up with all kinds of different stories or thought processes to make them not have to see that. You know what I'm saying? So think about this. So the couple ends up getting a divorce, and, my client had no idea that this was coming down the pike and has worked through this since then. But however, you have this whole situation, and last Christmas, they went home to their family and basically got asked a million questions, was lambasted for why the marriage didn't stay together, was accused of being the main reason why it didn't stay together, and also was looked upon as somebody that can never have a relationship that will ever work. There were a couple comments made by family members to the effect of, well, that was your chance of happiness, or I don't know if any other woman's going to find you, attractive, or I don't know, do you think you'll meet someone else? I mean, come on. I mean, that's painful for me to even say out loud, much less to listen to by your own family. Who does that, for God's sakes, right? And so recently we've been working on how to deal with this situation come here right now. Because for the most part, he's been avoiding his family most of the year. With having a large job, a big job, and lots to do, he hasn't really necessarily wanted to deal with it. And so now at this point in time, he has to deal with it come the next couple of days. And as we talked about it, I said, what's the biggest deal? What's the biggest problem with discussing the divorce? And he said, besides the fact that I just don't want to discuss it, he goes, I think a lot of it is that I feel that I'm being judged. I'm being put down and I'm being judged for a relationship that didn't work. And yes, indeed, I'm 50% of the relationship. However, I just never saw it coming, Ashley. He goes, and I feel bad enough because my parents have been married for over 50 years. And here I am. I can't even keep a marriage for 5 years. It makes me feel sad. And everything that I know they're going to say to me, I've already said to myself. And I said, well, that's the key right there. Is that the reason why we get so upset a lot of times is because this stuff's already going on in our head a million times over. We don't need someone else to tell us what we already know. We don't need someone else to tell us, well, we screwed up a marriage. You know what? It wasn't all me, but you know what? I've already thought about that a million times, okay? You don't think that goes through my mind? But realizing family and realizing titles and the attack mode, we know that doesn't work. We know that when we strap on our artillery for battle, other people will do the same because they see us doing it. You see what I'm saying? And because they see us doing it, they're going to bring all the stuff that they have, all their comments, all their puns, lock, stock, and barrel with them to defeat. And I think that sometimes, too, though, based on our inclination on titling people, we have a tendency of reading more into the comment than is actually needed. We read more into it. We take it more literally. We get very upset and angry, and we get hostile. I can't believe my dad just said that. I can't believe my mom just said that. And I'm going to give you some tips here in just a few minutes of how to deal with that, of how to overcome that thought process, about how to move past that. But right now, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how when someone says something to us that we feel is derogatory, especially somebody that has a big title in our life, how it makes us feel small. How it makes us feel small. It makes us feel so small that it's almost like we revert back to a childlike kind of state of mind. And not like in a good, spiritual, ooh, I love the trees way. Oh, I love the birds, and let me touch the plants. No, kind of like in that fetal position of, oh, don't hurt me, please don't hurt me. Oh, my God, don't hurt me, please, God, don't hurt me, don't, please, God, don't hurt me. That way. And it's like we're getting beaten the crap out of by our own family members, right? Because they have that title, remember? That title. And I always think it's interesting when we get back to that fetal position, when we feel so small and we feel scared because of that title. And I've had that happen before. And let me give you an example of mine because, I use client examples here and there, and I have to be very anonymous about this because, you have to be. Because I respect my clients, and I respect their issues, and I respect them. But when it comes to me, I can tell you exactly about my life. It was last year. It was in November, and my father and I had talked on the phone several different times. And every time I asked him, I said, hey, let me know about your Christmas plans. He doesn't live in town. He lives out of state. And let me know if you're planning on coming in or not. Let me know if you're planning on coming in or not. Okay? And so when you think about it, it was just about purely planning for the holiday season. It wasn't really anything more or less. And in December, we talked on the phone a couple more times. And at the time, I was on the board of a theater center. And so I was going to get a bunch of extra tickets for A Christmas Story, so that the whole family, everybody could go. And there's several people that'd be going. And so I waited, though, because I didn't really know what to do. But then I never heard back from him. So I went on and bought all the tickets I could. And it was 2 days before. No, I'm sorry. It was the day before Christmas Eve. And I get a text from him because I had texted him and said something about Christmas. And I get a text from him and he literally says, we won't be there. We've made other plans. We've made other plans? I mean, that sounds crazy. You're my father, my dad, and you text me, you don't call me, you text me last minute and not say, hey, I'm sorry, we're not going to make it this year. We love you, but it's just not going to happen. And you know what? We'll be there in spirit, and let's get together at the beginning of the new year. No. It wasn't that at all. It was literally a text message that said, we've made other plans. And I don't know about you, but the last time I heard something like that, it was coming out of the mouth of somebody that I don't speak to anymore. And it's interesting how titles, okay, first off, if this had just been somebody that I knew, and I don't think a friend would even do that either. A friend that's been coming to your Christmas celebration for the last 4 years is just going to, the day before Christmas Eve say that, they've made other plans. Not what plans they've made. Not, hey, thank you so much. Not, hey, I love you, I'm going to miss you. No, we're not going to be there. We got something better to do. And I sat back and I got angry. Woo! I got red-faced angry. And I know some of you can understand how it is when you get red-faced angry. You get so angry, you can't even see straight. You got little stars and stripes and clovers and everything else in your eyes. You're like, golly, I'm seeing things, you know what I mean? And it's like you're on this anger trip. And I called my mother and I called her on the phone and she was in some rehearsal and I said, I got to talk to you right now. And I told her what happened. And she's like, I got to get off the phone right now. I'm calling your dad. See, my parents are divorced, you understand? So there's a couple of little interesting nibbits of information there that anybody that comes from a divorced family knows how this can be. And so she called him and then calls me back and apparently had reamed him out. And I had not asked for that. But I like that she stepped up to the plate and helped in her way. And it meant something to me. However, it doesn't change the fact that my father, my dad, I came from his seed, sent me a text message saying that we wasn't going to be around. He wasn't going to be there. He's made other plans. Who does that? And I ask that question right now, who does that? Because this is my tip for you tonight. One of my tips, actually. Is to take the labeling, to rid yourself of the titles, and rid yourself of the resentment. Rid yourself of those labels. Rid yourself of the resentment by implementing the friendship quotient. And what I mean by that is when we implement the friendship quotient, we no longer have mom and dad as a title, brother or sister, aunt or uncle, grandmother, grandfather. We have the friend quotient. And how many of your friends have done bonehead things that you've forgiven? I can count millions. I've had friends that last minute couldn't make my Christmas party because they were totally effed up. Couldn't get out of their house and had met a stripper at the bar 2 nights before and they were ringing on the new year that way. Okay? Maybe for 10 minutes I was a little upset, but you know what? It's a friend, and I don't know if that's really the way they should have been spending their time or not, but it's not for me to judge. It wasn't hurting me any. Think about that. Some of the most extreme stuff that your friends do, as long as it's not affecting or hurting other people or hurting you, it seems okay. I mean, you might not sit there and advocate for you. You might not do a PSA on it, endorsing them. Right? You might not do a PSA on endorsing their behavior, but in the same fact, you're not going to sit there and judge them, ridicule them, hate on them, expect certain things from them. Because you have some friends, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but you got some friends you can't expect anything from. I mean, you just can't. I mean, there is no expectations. There is no options. And some of those friends might be friends that you might want to, well, let go. But some of those friends are just crazy. And you kind of love them for their craziness. You don't need to be around them all the time, but when you are, it's not too bad. But you're not constantly judging them because you know what? They don't have a grand title in your life. And this is so profound, really, if you think about it. Because this can actually change people's lives. When you start removing titles from your thoughts, from your emotions, and you stop acting from people's titles, you get usually more of what you appreciate. And what I mean is this. Some people use their titles as something to hold you back with. Some people have titles to scare you, to keep you in line. Some people's titles keep you from stepping up or voicing your opinion. Some people's titles keep you feeling like you're a child in a child state, feeling small and tiny. And some people's titles don't feel that way, but again, you have to look back at your expectations for them. Are you expecting too much from them because of their title? And that's key. Because once we figure that out, the Christmas table and the holiday table isn't that big of a deal anymore because titles no longer have any sort of bearing on the argument, on the issue, or on the conversation itself. For many of you, you have major jobs, major careers that some of your family have no idea, honestly, what you do. They might ask you, like, hey, John, what have you been working on lately? Or, how is the company doing, son? Or, sweetheart, how is your business doing, honey? And some of your businesses might be more straight and to the point, easier for people to understand. But some of you have very intricate businesses that, your relatives and your mom and dad might not always understand exactly what you do. I mean, some of you do some major analytical work, some major finance work where the interest level from them is kind of small, and so whatever you say kind of goes over their head, and so they don't really think about it. I have a really good friend of mine, and he's a chief financial officer of a company. And when he goes home, he always feels tiny. And he's not a small guy, it doesn't really matter either way, but he always feels tiny. He feels like a kid again. He's always wondering if he's going to get small, like, on Big, the movie Big, where he gets big. But remember how he was a kid before? I mean, they feel like they go backwards. Like they go from being like Tom Hanks to that kid, Baskin. They feel like that. And they're like, why do I feel like that? And he particularly was like, I'm a CFO of a freaking company. I have hundreds and hundreds of people that work there. And I go home and it's like I bow down to mom and dad. And I go, well, you got the whole title issue going. He's like, well, I'm a CFO. I go, but that title has no bearing in the family. So you're allowing other titles to get in the way of your emotional well-being or your emotional ability to step up to the plate and be a man, whereas your title doesn't even hold water in the family dynamic. Do you see what I'm saying here? Yes, it's like the same thing as if you were the president of the United States, but yet you're with your mom and your dad, and your mom still has the ability over you, right? I don't know if y'all have ever had that before, where your mom like takes water out of a glass and like smudges it on your face to get a smudge off, or it like licks her finger and like rubs off some dirt off you. It's like, dude, you just used your spit on my face. Like, I don't want this at all. But you're like, it's mom, right? But nobody's over there looking at you like you're the president of the United States because that doesn't fit. So why should all the other titles fit? And I'm not saying that you should stop calling them mom or dad or knowing that they are your mom and dad, but we have to stop using that as a crutch to not be yourself, and we have to stop using those titles as a way of being more agitated when somebody doesn't live up to your expectations or does something stupid or childish or dumb or mean or rude. Because you know what? As you think about it, titles, especially if it's a mom or dad title, mom or dad aren't supposed to do anything wrong. They walk on water. So if you catch mom and dad not walking on water one day as a kid, that's going to be a problem. When you grow up and you have an argument or an issue with them, you feel weird about stepping up and commenting and saying how you feel because of the title. When the title gets in the way of you being authentic and honest and soulful, that's a problem. It's the same thing in big corporations when you are working for the CFO and the CFO has a really bonehead idea. And instead of speaking up and saying, you know what, I think it's an awful idea, or saying, hey, I think there's some better ideas and let's explore those ideas. Instead of that, you kiss ass because it's the CEO. Because you don't want to lose a job. That's the CEO. That's the time when the title gets in the way. Now, whether or not you would have lost your job for being honest, well, I hope you're not in an organization like that. But I'll tell you one thing. When you start making decisions and you start speaking out based on something that's not authentic, that's a problem because you can't live up to that for your whole life. You can't. And it's a really amazing, freeing feeling when you can be yourself around your family. And I feel that a lot of the arguments we have during the holiday season and throughout the year is based on us not feeling like we are respected or us not being able to be ourselves and directly getting angry and upset by not being able to be ourselves and taking that out on our family. And not to say that they're innocent. I'm not saying that everybody else is innocent and you're guilty. I'm just saying that it can magnify the feelings that we already harbor. Especially when we have expectations on them that they should and they can't do any wrong and they should never do any wrong because they're perfect because they are X, Y, Z. And so let's start talking about the holidays right now because I think this is directly correlating with what I'm talking about. And pardon my nasally sound tonight. I think I'm getting a little holiday cold here. So I apologize for that. Maybe I sound like Phoebe from Friends, but I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe I'll sing a Smelly Cat here in a little while, and we'll decide if that is a possibility or not. I feel more like Darth Vader or something, like breathing heavy and all this stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like, come on. Give me a break. But no, but seriously. Let's go into the holiday season. Let's think about it. Let's all be at the dinner table right now. All of us are at our dinner table. Family's there. Maybe you got a brother. Maybe you got a sister. Mom, dad, maybe one parent. Maybe one's passed. Maybe one's there. Maybe you have both parents. And there'll be conversation. And some of the conversation you might not be totally thrilled on. But I figured out in life that it's interesting that we can drive the conversation if we want to. If we're willing to take the driver's seat, we can drive the car, right? Now, not all the time. Sometimes you might have somebody like me that always likes to drive, right? And I might give you a hard time unless you're driving your car or possibly a rental car, then I won't push it. However, for the most part, people are looking for a leader. And if you're not leading, you're following, right? And so in the beginning of the conversation, you can steer this holiday conversation the direction you want it to go. And I'll give you a few tips on that conversation. One, people like to talk about themselves. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't care how old they are. I don't care how old the stories are. I don't care if you heard them before or not. And some of you might have heard them a whole hell of a lot of times. But people like to talk about themselves. And so remember, anytime that you want to get out of a conversation that you are not feeling comfortable about, turn it on somebody else and be positive and talk about their life. Jimmy, yeah, hey man, I've heard about so many good things you got going on this year. Tell me more about your company. How's that going? Janet, oh man, the pictures of your kids are just, they're just flawless. How old is little Johnny? 3.5 months. Wow, we'll have to play after this. I'd love to hold little Johnny, and that's just awesome. Maybe we get some pictures together. Tell me more. How was the pregnancy? And it doesn't have to be exactly this topic, but what I'm saying is that people like to talk about themselves. And the cool thing is that usually when we get rid of the labels in our family and we allow people to talk amongst themselves and openly and honest, guess what happens? We find out something about them that we actually adore. We find out something about them that we can relate to. And I know some of you out there go, man, honestly, me and my sister, me and my brother, me and mom, we haven't had anything to really talk about in years. Well, you know what? I ask you to do this. Try it out. When we talk about subject matters like we do with our friends, we learn a lot because we're not putting a lot of judgment calls out there, right? And with our friends, when we ask them about artists or artwork, or what we ask them about their opinion on something, do you take it personally? No. Why do we not take it personally? Because we don't put as much emotional feeling on it, right? We don't feel so emotionally one way or another because that person, yes, they are smart, and yes, we love them, but it's not the same as having a parent tell you one thing or another, right? It's totally different. And we allow people to have open conversation when it's our friends, right? Hence why we usually have them around, unless some of you are complete control freaks, and we'll have to go into a show all about that some other time. But for the most part, you listen, and you learn a lot. And I ask you to do the same thing now with your family, is asking them interesting, introspective questions. Getting their perspective on things that you've really never asked them about before. Not completely controversial things, but things that are kind of going on. Get their take on stuff. And I bet that if you get to that take and you get to that perspective, you're going to find some common ground that's really going to open your eyes to your connection with them. And you know what that also does too, is that open dialogue allows us to eliminate those titles. Because we stop seeing them as their title and we begin to see them as our friend. And that's what's so important, really, right? Is that when I deal with clients a lot of times, when their parents are older and they've had issues with their parents their whole life, they'll tell me about how their parents began to talk or they began to communicate. And usually it's toward the last years or last months of their parents' lives. And they told me, they said, we actually got along, we became friends. And so that's what I'm saying, is that the friendship is what it's all about. Even a marriage that has gotten a divorce, when you actually become friends with your ex-spouse and you can actually sit there and say, you know what, we're better friends than we were married, don't you actually kind of feel good about that? Isn't that kind of like a badge of honor? Right? I mean, think about people who dated, who were friends and were friends first and then dated and fell in love and got married. You know what the people always say, right? Well, we were friends first. Because that gives it like this genuine concept. It gives you this genuine feel like they actually knew each other. They cared about each other before they hooked up. It's like the relationship has a basis for something, right? That friendship gives the relationship a basis for something more than what it is. Or more than what it is on a surface level. And so, you know, like when I think about my family and I think about my mom and dad, I'm the only child, so I don't have brothers and sisters. I mean, I have some adopted brothers and sisters that I personally adopted myself. But no, I'm talking about like family, mom and dad. The first and foremost, my mom and dad are friends. And there are certain things that some of them have done that I don't really like, or certain things that I've done that I don't sit there and go, oh, great, I'm going to write a PSA on that and go all over the world telling people how to do that. But no, because they're friends, I can accept some of the things that they do that I might not normally accept because of their title. I also don't take arguments and issues that seriously. Why? I mean, because when you think about it, when people don't have titles, you're not scared of them. When they're a friend and they're a true friend, one argument or 2 arguments or 10 arguments ain't going to get in the way of the friendship. You know what I'm saying? And when you start categorizing and seeing people outside of their title, but more that you see them for what's inside their heart, even if they're a child, even if your dad is a grown child, okay, and he only thinks about himself sometimes, but occasionally you see these glimpses of a kid that just wants to be loved. That's the things that you hold on to. Those are the things, those are the feelings and the emotions that you connect when you go, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking for. That's what it is. I might not have it all the time. It definitely isn't 24/7. It might be 5 glimpses a year, but that's worth it to me. And the reason why it's worth it to me and the reason why it's not a big deal to me is because I don't define him as just my dad. I define him as a friend. A friend doesn't have to be on top of their game 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right? A friend can be down. A friend can do this. A friend can do bonehead things now and then. A friend can forget about you for a little while. And then a friend can be ADD and call you up 1,000,000 times in one day. And if you don't answer, they'll freak out on your voicemail. A friend does that occasionally. And when you begin to realize that your family should be your friend first and your family second, that's when a lot of these arguments and a lot of the family conflict seem to wash away. It's like we put all the stock in the family conflict when in reality, what does that really mean? I mean, when it comes down to it, I just want to be honest, trusting with my family. I want them to trust me. And I want us to have really amazing memories and not misery. And so this year, I ask you to try out the Burgess way of the holiday season that should lead into the full year. Because I think that once you start doing this, or, just, you might already be doing this, but even implement it even more, you'll see it across a broad spectrum, and it's going to change your life forever. Begin to rid yourself of titles, which directly rids yourself of resentment. It's time to get rid of the titles and go into that season and get what you get and see the humor in things that would normally make you upset because you're looking at it through the eyes of this is my friend. And I know that my friend probably wouldn't hurt me on purpose. And I know that it might just be them thinking about themselves. But you know what? I forgive my friends for doing that. And I do have one caveat, though, however. There might be some of you out there who are on kind of teetering on the edge on the fence about what to do this year. Should you go to the family? Should you go to the family and spend time with them? Or should you stay home? Or should you take a trip? And I ask you to think about relationships. If you can get rid of the titles and see them as friends, is it worth spending time? Can you find some common ground? Is it worth it to you? And I always think it's interesting because a lot of people get stressed out about this time, but it's when you finally take those titles out that things seem to get a lot easier. When you take the titles away from people, it's like the same as taking their clothes away. It's like giving a speech to a huge group and you've taken all their clothes away. So everybody, the 20,000 people you're speaking to are all booty butt naked. And I'll tell you one thing. If everybody's booty butt naked and you're standing up there clothed on stage doing a speech, you could talk about anything. You would not be worried one bit. You would not worry about your speech. You would not worry about how they're taking it. You wouldn't worry about any of that. Instead, you would know that you're happy you're there, and they're thankful that you're there. And that's the way we look at this whole holiday season and into the next year, is that when we take away titles, there is no more fear. There is no more stress. And better yet, we're able to tackle issues from a specific point of view of friendship. Like I tell a lot of single or post-divorce clients, when you start dating again, and somebody, especially for women, you start dating again, and the guy texts you, and you start analyzing how you're going to respond, that's where you make the wrong move. When you start analyzing how you're going to respond, that's when you make the wrong move. And why is that? Because you've taken them out of a friendship position and you put them in this, I don't know, this weird state of mind, this weird state. Oh, God, I want to impress them. Oh, God, I want to say the right thing. Oh, I want to make sure I get a second date. I don't want to look too overly zealous. I don't want them to think that I'm needy. Oh, God, what do I say? And the same thing goes for your family over the holidays and throughout the year. Quit overanalyzing what they say. Quit overanalyzing what the relatives say, what your mom says, what your dad says, and just hear it as you would a friend. Your best friend that you've known for 20 years, do you overanalyze what they say? Do you have time to overanalyze what they say? I hope not. Because if you do, you might be thinking that your friend's really not your friend, and that can be the case sometimes. However, if this is a good friend that normally has your back, you don't overanalyze what they say. If they say something, it's face value. You take it. You don't sit there and go, what do they mean by that? I don't know if I like their tone of voice like that. It's the same as spouses fighting. I don't like your tone of voice. What did you mean by that? I don't like your tone of voice. Well, take that back. Well, the point is that if they were not spouses and those were two friends, they'd probably start laughing by then. Because it sounds insane. And the same goes for the family this holiday season. Walk in there and own it. Be you. Be authentic. Don't be childlike. Don't get back into the fetal position. Don't feel small. And realize when we have extreme expectations on people and when we're judging them for making bonehead decisions. And begin to see your family as friends. And when you see them as friends and you don't overanalyze what they say, life gets a lot easier. Life gets a lot easier. You become a lot more lighter in your feelings and your emotional state. You have more joy in your life because you're not CSIing every freaking comment somebody makes, right? Instead, you're just letting it be. Because if you're being honest and authentic and a good person, then why shouldn't everybody else? And even if they're not, it shouldn't even affect you. It should go like water off a duck's back. It shouldn't even affect you. Seriously, use the force. This is very important because when we go into this holiday season, you're going to feel happier, healthier, more joyful. And the most important thing, too, out of the whole deal is it's really all about you. I know, that sounds crazy, right? But it is. The way we feel about ourselves directly relates to how we feel that others feel about us. So the way that we feel about ourselves directly relates to how we feel that others feel about us, right? And why that is because if we walk into a room with our head held high, and we have a smile on our face, and it's a real smile, and we feel good. And you know what I'm talking about. Get into that state of mind right now where you got that new dress on or you got that new suit on with that new tie on, and you're sporting it. You might not even need to dress up. You got those jeans on, you got those awesome driver loafers on, or, whatever it is that you have on, and you're sporting it. And you know what? You get out of bed, you got your coffee, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're getting ready, you're feeling good, you're in the groove. Walk in with that groove into your family setting and keep that mindset. Because you know what? People are going to jump to that level of energy. They're going to jump to your level because you got something that they like. Happiness and joy is contagious. And when you are really stoked and really happy and really joyful, people can't help but want some. They want a piece of that. They want some of that. This looks so good. So go into that and realize that when we think highly of ourselves, not in like an egotistical way, but we feel good and powerful and at peace, right? At peace. When we feel at peace with ourselves, we're directly living our true life, by being at peace and being authentic, walking in there, being ourself, being nothing but ourself, which is the best thing we can be. Other people will be themselves. Other people will see where we're coming from, and other people will enjoy being around us. Now, there might be one or two relatives there that you got to deal with that just are always pissy, and that's okay. We're not trying to change everybody. We're not trying to, because it's not about changing other people, is it? It's about us. And a good way to deal with that, if you're dealing with one relative that doesn't seem to understand you or understand your perspective, or is just intolerable and is not very tolerant of you or tolerant of other people or very judgmental or argumentative, you don't have to spend time with everybody. If you have a person like that in your family, you don't have to spend time with everybody. You don't have to hang out with them. You don't have to spend time with them. You can say hi. You can give them a hug. Because I think it's nice to acknowledge people. Even if they're kind of crusty and angry or rude or whatever it is, it's nice to acknowledge people. Because again, if you love them and you care about them, that's really all that matters, right? No matter if they judge you or try to do something to you, it doesn't matter because it's not about them. The most important and the most amazing life that we can live by living our true life is by being honest and open and loving with ourselves, and that directly correlates to being loving and wonderful with other people. Because until we honestly love ourselves, we can't love anybody else. And so this year, even if there's somebody that's a little difficult, acknowledge them, give them a hug, give them a kiss, spend a couple of minutes with them, and move on throughout the room. You don't have to sit next to them. You don't have to be the caretaker. It's your life. You got one Christmas this year. You got one New Year's this year. You get one of each day. You get one of each second. You got one of this present moment right now, and it's time to use the most of it and get the most of the moment that you have. Because, again, it's all about you, and the most amazing part of it is all about you. And the more authentic and the more relevant and the more amazing and truthful you are, the more you get out of life, and it directly relates to your joy, which directly relates to your happiness, because it's all about joy, right? It's about having joy in what you do, finding the joy in everyday life, and embracing who you are, and looking in that mirror every day and smiling, because you know what? You might not have all the money. You might not have all the jewels. You might not have this. You might have that. You might have a lot of stuff, but you know what? It's all about what's in your heart. That's what matters, and how you go by showing it. Stay tuned. I got a great show for you next. And if you want to check out any other shows or any past blogs, go to ashleyburgess.com. ashleyburgess.com. You can check me out at ashleyburgess on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram at ashleyburgess. On Facebook, I have several pages, and I also have Perspectives with Ashley Burgess, which is a community page on Facebook that I like to hear what you have to say. Stay tuned, because Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in, yeah, okay, we'll be back in 3 shakes.